Flirty, Crying and Trying with Hannah.
And Calissa.
And Sarah.
Okay, so today they proposed the idea of doing a true crime episode.
Yeah, this was Handy Fanny's idea.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of like icky stuff on my For You page. And
For a few years, I feel like things come back around too. So it's always hard.
So I initially had some very strong thoughts on it, and I wanted to save them for this episode.
Ooh, I love it.
Yes. Okay, so I used to be a super crime junkie. Like all in my rotation was only true crime podcasts. And then I had heard of somebody like they just like stopped listening to true crime because it was like too heavy in their life. And so
You get the depressies from that stuff.
yes.
Yeah, totally.
And so I completely went cold turkey on true crime podcasts, and I have not listened to one in a while. I would say like occasionally, I maybe listen to one once a week, but that's a lot more than I used to. I used to be constant in my head, and I just started thinking about like how dark these stories are, and that's just constantly in my head all the time. Like it's just heavy, and then you hear a really bad case, and then it's just like with you. Like I searched the episode that we're going to talk about today, and it took me about 5 minutes into the episode, and I just had to shut it off because I was like, this is too much. It literally hurts my heart to listen to some
because
of
you
these.
could potentially face it at work.
Yeah.
Kid stuff now really gets to me. Where like before it didn't.
Yeah. And so the final straw that really made me quit listening to true crime podcasts is there was a episode and the boy's name was Gannon, and I have a son named Gannon, and he died by Munchausen by proxy.
No.
And it was a long, slow, and terrible death. And the podcasters in the beginning of the episode were joking around about it and talking about how Munchausen by proxy is their favorite murder.
Oh.
And like the hairs are standing up on the back of my neck. That sat so wrong with me. How can something that tortures a child be your favorite thing?
Oh, exactly.
And the way that these podcasters like sometimes present the episodes are so lighthearted and she was stabbed 27 times, and it's like
While they're doing their makeup?
yes. And it's like, this is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's child. And
I remember
you're just
seeing a meme, and it was like, imagine you died and your story is being told by someone who's like,
Are you talking about like
an airhead?
Murder mystery and makeup? Bailey Sarian.
yes.
But they say they like her thing, but I'm like, but if you look at, I mean, she does do a good job of telling it, but
She also is not the person who's like joking around about stuff
she
during the episode. So I've not heard any podcasters who do true crime who treat it that way.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah.
Like before we sat down this episode, we kind of were talking about how we wanted to frame this episode. And we were coming off a previous episode with Hannah's husband, and he had given us an idea for a podcast, and we were all kind of like, how do we like make this fun without being insensitive? Yeah. So yeah, that just like brings that back to mind again after we were just talking about it.
Yeah. Have you guys listened to Crime Junkie before?
Yes,
That's like
obviously.
a really big, popular podcast. And if you listen to some of the early episodes, because I went back and binged all of them. I started listening around episode 63, and they've got hundreds of podcast episodes now. And I started listening way back then. And in the beginning, they were pretty lighthearted about things. And looking back on it, now I can see that. But
I think it's
they're more
hard too
serious
because
now.
they like
weren't there some of their stuff like in like the 1800s, like way
maybe
Morbid does a lot of cases that are like way from the 1800s.
that stuff is scary.
Yeah.
I can understand the like progression of getting more serious, as you were saying how you don't really listen anymore because it gets to you. I have a feeling that it's probably similar for the people who make these podcasts that like, you know, they hear about it so often, they talk about it so often that then it's like, okay, it is like heavy.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's hard to continue lighthearted.
Yeah.
Not that it's good, but
How old were you guys when you first started consuming true crime content?
So I didn't really listen to any true crime podcasts, but my mom would watch 2020 every Friday, and it was a story about, who was that? A girl that was abducted on vacation. It was huge.
Madeline Klein or whatever.
No,
Is that her name?
well, she was too, but I know who you're thinking of.
Is it Sarah?
No, I gotta look it up.
But anyway, that was going viral, and just any of these kids that were kidnapped or murdered, I was just kind of stuck into it. And then my dad would watch Law and Order a lot, so I just kind of grew up watching Law and Order. I didn't understand what was happening throughout the shows, but like, I was kind of introduced that way, and I was pretty young. I think.
Yeah, for as long as I can remember.
7.
Yeah, as long as I can remember, my mom, we were always watching Law and Order SVU and like CSI Miami, all of those types of shows. So I don't want to say that like those sad, scary things are normal. Like in my mind, obviously viewing them all the time, but
why did we like
it wasn't like
that?
so off.
Well, I was watching
Kilter.
Law and Order SVU when I was 5.
Yeah, same.
And it was like every night on Friday nights, it would be on, and we'd all sit in front of the TV and watch it. And I'm looking back, and there were some very strong adult themes.
Oh, yeah.
But like as a
about-
kid, I didn't understand half the stuff. I'm
No,
like,
that's true. But I feel like we kind of talked about this, I think maybe when we were talking about something else, but like, I kind of credit that show too for being like so real that I really reevaluated when I got to my teenage years and was like, okay, I'm not going to be a partier.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be blah, 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 to like put myself in a position to potentially be in a situation like this. So
I would
although it
always,
was
those
really,
episodes
yeah,
got
they get to you. Yeah.
When they're like, oh, they went to a party and they never came back. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and my mom and dad would be like, don't you ever do that.
It did teach you about like adults who maybe like, I remember a gymnastics episode where there was like a really famous gymnast and she was like having a relationship with an older person and ended up being like murdered and stuff like that. So like, I think those also showed me like you can't
show the red flags.
Yeah, like you
first.
need to be aware of like creepy adults even when you're a child, like that kind of stuff. So I don't know, pros and cons. Pros and cons.
I just think about like Carver right now, and he's 7. And at what age would I feel that this would be appropriate to show him?
I would never watch my shows those kinds of shows, Criminal Minds and stuff in front of my kids.
No, they can get some pretty dark. Criminal Minds can.
Oh,
I don't want him to ask
that was
me
my
questions
favorite
about
show,
that stuff. Yeah,
but like I said, I binged watched half the series, and then every time I went out in public, I'd be like, "Oh my god,
I'm gonna get on your shoulder." Yeah.
So how much of it gave you an unhealthy anxiety, and how much of it gave you a healthy anxiety of how the world can be? You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
well, like you said, like you watch it so much and that it just consumes you, and then you don't feel like you can be normal, quote unquote, when you go out in the real world. So then I had to cut it off and be like, okay, the world isn't scary. You know, just be aware of your surroundings. Like, I don't know.
I think from like a childhood perspective, it was a relatively healthy mix, I think, of like kind of being scared straight and just like being scared. But as an adult, I feel like the more frequently that I read articles, like the articles that Hannah shared, or like the articles that my mother-in-law had sent me after I had Gus, like those things keep me from like walking around my neighborhood, even by myself in the middle of the day. I'm scared. And like I don't take my kids on a walk in our neighborhood, even though we live in a safe neighborhood. Like I'm just scared.
yeah.
I don't know.
It can create a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's hard to like shut your brain off and be like, nope, the world is not that scary. I don't know. Like it is, but it isn't. So I don't know.
Yeah. A big one for me was like daycare. Part of like staying home for me was because I think it was me. I can't remember. It was around the time that I had Gus, but there was an article that had come out about a woman who ran a daycare and she had abused one of the kids and then murdered the kid.
Oh my
And I was like, yeah, can't.
Okay.
So like that was a big thing for me and like why I wanted to stay home.
But if you were to go to a daycare, I think you would kind of know.
Potentially, but you never.
Like, oh, this seems safe, or like, oh, this.
I feel
not,
like me as a person, I hide a lot of my sadness with like being, I don't know, I don't want to say bubbly because I'm not a bubbly person, but like being, outgoing, kind of whatever. But like inside, I'm a sad person. So what do other people hide? I don't know.
I suppose. I don't know. I feel like sometimes you can kind of pick up a vibe in the environment.
Sometimes, yeah. But how well do people mask? I don't know.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I feel like I mask pretty well.
Like that Ruby Frankie, she was that mommy vlogger and, made it seem like, oh yeah, this is how I train, or not, I don't think train our kids. This is how I discipline my kids. And then the fact that no one really kind of picked up on those weird little cues, like
The red flags.
you start your kid, you make them do yard work in 100-degree weather.
Right.
Like,
With no water.
and you make them do wall sits for how long? Like, I don't know.
Make them sleep on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting case.
Yeah.
That's coming up.
I've listened, say I don't consume true crime content, and then, I'm all up to date on the Ruby Frankie case.
Well, I think some like being aware of like current events is a little
Yeah.
bit different
Yeah.
than listening to true crime because a lot of that, not a lot maybe, but a good portion of that is previous past instances.
And the
So,
reason I listen to it is family vloggers. I'm like, those are kind of coming out to be very bad. The kids don't have a choice. The kids aren't getting compensated, things like that. And so I watch a guy, the Dad Challenge podcast. I think I've mentioned this before, and he was covering the Ruby Frankie case, and because it was a family vlogger, and he kind of goes back through the videos, and like you can pick up on the red flags of like,
yeah. I mean, hindsight is 20/20. That's what they always say. So,
yeah.
did you either of you ever follow like Honey Boo Boo or anything like that?
I just saw that.
I was seeing her stuff now, like her current stuff on TikTok, and how the mother had basically taken all of her money and
On
spent
her-
it like nefariously, I guess, or
On
something.
her child, it's
On a house for herself.
no. At every child star, they have a Coogie account,
A Coogan. Yep.
Coogan account.
Yeah.
And the parents are supposed to put like I think almost all of it.
It's actually a very small percent. I think I want to say there's a 2 in it. I should look it up.
Well, either way, my point in bringing that up was just that whatever her name is, Alana, I think her name is, had said like in this interview, basically like, my whole childhood was like not even a childhood, blah, 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 whatever. I spent all my whole entire childhood working, and for what? For nothing. I have nothing now.
Yeah, because her mom took all
Yeah.
of it. But before family vloggers, there was reality shows.
Exactly.
So, but the fact, I don't know. I watched Honey Boo Boo because I thought it was real and raw. Like they weren't perfect.
They were funny.
They were. But then, what ended it for me was when June took back a guy who molested
One of the other kids.
Chickadee. I don't know her name, but I think she passed.
Well, yeah, someone had cancer, I think, or something. Yeah, I hadn't followed them really closely.
I think
ever,
that's when they
but-
kind
or
of
at
fell
all,
off
but-
a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, guys, guess how much they have to set aside in a Coogan account?
12%.
10.
15. That's it. Out of all of that money that they make, that's all that is required to set aside. But it doesn't apply to family vloggers.
Oh,
It applies
interesting.
to people, to actors. You have to have an employer.
Oh, I saw that
And the
JoJo
employers,
Siwa,
yes.
her mom, the minute she turned 18, she booted out of there because I think her mom was taking almost all of it.
There's a lot of stuff going around about JoJo Siwa right now.
I
feel
listened to her
bad.
podcast on Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
It was interesting. She's actually like pretty much floating her parents' boat quite a bit, her entire family. Like, because she talked about how much she's got enough money to do all of this stuff and to get her parents a house and all of this stuff. And she's actually on good terms with her parents.
Is she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, she would have to be because her and her mom like managed this group. It's called like Exo Pop or something like that.
Yes.
And there's stuff right now saying like there was this huge blow up about unsafe work conditions and all that kind of stuff. And basically her whole karma release and the, I don't know, the craziness, the like weird stuff surrounding that whole video and her being like kind of about it
It's supposed to be a distraction.
is a distraction. It's a cover up of like this court case that's happening. Like they're suing JoJo Siwa and the mother because of like unsafe work environment
of
situations.
this dance team. She pretty much did what
Yeah.
Abby Lee did to her.
Exactly.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad because she didn't have a normal childhood either.
Yeah.
She was just pushed in front of the camera. She
sure.
was makeup and all these
And then that was
routines and
her whole
everything.
persona.
Yeah,
And
just
like,
being
where
surrounded by
does-
those people.
Yeah.
And like, yes, you can do it. You're a star.
Yeah.
And then,
Where does that end and like the real JoJo begin type
yeah,
of.
like I think she's getting that reality right now with that song Karma, because people around her are like, yes, you're doing it. You're a star. This is gonna be number one. Blah blah
Yes, she's surrounded by yes men
blah. Yes.
who are not telling her how ridiculous she is.
Yeah. The fringe hat. I don't know. It's kind of cool, but yeah, the personality or like the persona, I guess, in general is just weird.
But I feel like more child actors are kind of like that, low key a little bit. They just don't.
It's not as highly presented, maybe.
Yeah, because I mean, social media is now everywhere. Well, I'm sure Macaulay Culkin probably would have been that way at
don't know.
that age, maybe.
He was emancipated at like 12 or something, wasn't he?
Because
Or
his
10 or
parents
something?
kind of they
Because he had
take
crazy
everything.
parents. Yeah, I think so.
They took
Or they tried to.
I think that this is why him and Brenda Song worked together, because she understood where he was coming from.
Yeah.
Because she was also
Yeah, seeing them together is so sweet. Yeah. And their kids are so cute.
yeah, they're really cute.
Yeah. You haven't seen them?
I have. I was trying to. It took me all that time to process who Macaulay Culkin.
Home Alone kid.
yeah.
I don't know what
get
else he
it.
was in. I know
As
he
soon
was
as
in
he
some
said
other
Brenda's
stuff,
song, I'm
but-
like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Poor child stars. So, do rich people get away with crimes? Is the system unfair? So, I mean, because they are kind of in the spotlight and everything. Mm-hmm. Do they get away with stuff more because of money? I think so.
I think
yes.
you brought up a really good point with the cover-ups. Like, I think there's a lot more cover-ups and distractions and smoke
When
and
you have
mirrors than we
money
realize.
and like clout and stuff to throw around, I think it's so much easier to get away with things, but also to bury things.
Do you think that's what
Which-
Lizzo's doing?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what a lot of people do.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm surprised there's not more stuff going on with the whole Diddy situation right now. And like, well, like supposedly Kim Kardashian's involved, and I haven't seen anything about that. Supposedly Kris Jenner is involved. Haven't seen anything about that. Like, I don't know.
I just think of Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
I think that he really got
He got the short end of the stick there.
yes.
That also is kind of. What else do you say? I don't know.
He was abused.
Yeah,
I'm sure
potentially.
of it.
Yeah,
It's all like the sick.
and Usher too. Apparently, he like did an interview, I think, and he lightly maybe touched on.
Which I'm really surprised he even said anything,
I
because
know.
anyone who says anything,
they get
Cease and desist.
yeah.
Legal action.
yeah.
Allegedly. You have
Yeah.
to make sure everything in this podcast is alleged. It's not
Oh
fact.
yeah.
Yeah, this is just off of what we've
Don't
been
send us a
reading.
cease and desist, okay?
Kris Jenner, don't come after us.
Yeah, so
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like so many celebs hide everything.
Yeah, for sure.
There's that. I don't know what she is. Her thing is Whoa Vicky. She was in that Bad Baby era with.
yes, and now she's like turned her life around.
Did she?
I think so. Yeah, from what I heard.
But she said that if you go to parties in LA, you can't have your phone on you because there's some stuff going on.
Yeah,
that-
but they have like video
on,
cameras
like
in the house.
what?
exactly. And
There's like
drugs, probably.
yeah, drugs and probably sex trafficking and all kinds of things like that. And so they'll have you on their cameras that are in the house, but you can't take a video to have.
You can't have your
To
phone on
prove
you.
who was there or what
Right.
happened.
So I remember downloading TikTok for the first time in 2020, and I was kind of scrolling through some videos, and this girl was like, "Guys, I snuck my phone in. We're at Scott Disick's party," and then they showed like a quick little snippet of Scott doing drugs on the countertop while there's people playing pong on the tables.
Well, that's not shocking.
Yeah, like, he was going through a very bad
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
but that's why they don't. Parties
Yeah.
like that don't want you to have
You don't
your
want
phone.
to sell that kind of
Yeah.
stuff to the media or something.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that video is probably doesn't even exist anymore
Yeah.
because Kris Jenner probably found out.
Yeah.
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 Hit her with a
That's true.
lawsuit. So scary stuff. So yeah, I kind of think the rich kind of get away with some stuff, like that Felicity Huffman and who was the other girl that?
Oh,
paid
are you
the
talking about the college? She was the mom, Becky on
Fuller House.
Full House. Yeah.
Yes.
Full House.
I forget
she
what her
paid
name
off
They
Yeah.
both
What was the
did.
other girl's name?
the
Felicity.
admissions counselor,
Who was
wasn't
that,
it?
though? Who did
Felicity
she play?
Huffman.
Who did she play?
She was on Desperate Housewives. She,
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep.
She played Lynette Scavo.
Dude, she went to jail for like a significant amount
she?
of time. I think so.
I thought she got.
Allegedly.
I thought she got a slap on the wrist.
I think the other girl did. The other lady.
Probably.
Becky.
I think they both did.
House jail.
Just over here Googling. See, I don't think she went
Oh
to jail.
gosh,
think
I
was the
thought
other
it
lady.
was longer. It was 2 months in prison. I mean, any time in prison is a long time.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
prison. It's not jail.
Yeah.
It's like
2
But
months
probably
in
like
prison?
not a high max
no,
facility.
no.
It's
I
probably
would
like-
assume not. No,
like an orange
and
is in-
she, considering she was a celebrity, she probably had pretty good treatment. She was probably in
Yeah,
her
I watched
own-
Orange is the New Black, and I didn't know that was kind of based on a true story. But they were talking about how this famous chef, went on in the prison, and she kind of got the treatment, that royalty treatment a little bit. Good foods.
Martha Stewart. She went to prison. Didn't she get like? I bet she got pretty good treatment.
Probably. So,
That's like a rich thing, you know. And it's a protection thing, I think, too, because
I don't think they should be protected. I think that everyone in
Gen
jail is
Pop?
equal.
yep, you're all equals.
you're all
You
criminals.
all did enough to get in this place. Jet and pop for all of you,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
I would hate to be a prison guard.
How do you feel about that in regards to? I had heard. I don't know if this is true, but I think it was maybe on a show, probably Law and Order, honestly, where child sex offenders aren't in Gen Pop because they basically get murdered immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like they should also be in Gen Pop and just like you reap the consequences type of thing, or like,
That's hard to say.
It is.
you know?
You know, I heard something, now that you bring that up, I heard a therapist, like she hosted group therapy for sex offenders in a prison. And she said, these people are the nicest, kindest people.
Ew.
They'll pull your chair out for you. Yes, ma'am. No, thank you. All the manners.
Maskers.
Because they're grooming. They're constantly grooming. They only know how to speak grooming language to people. It just gave me the creeps after I
Yeah.
heard that. But
Ew.
it makes sense.
Yeah,
you know
it
what
totally
I mean?
does. Yeah.
So is that with men or?
So it's kind of like
I would
watch
think
out,
both.
watch out for nice men is pretty much the
Yikes.
lesson of that story.
I saw Criminal Minds where the guy was really nice, but that's probably goes around to that.
Yeah.
But I remember that Pearl, she had that Gabriel Hernandez.
That sounds familiar.
That
Yeah.
Netflix did a documentary about this little boy that was abused, and like his mom and the stepdad killed him. But she went to prison. I don't know for how long. But they first didn't tell the inmates like what she did.
Yeah, and I've heard that too, that they keep things
And
private.
yeah, they kept it private. But then I think one of the prison guards kind of got sick of her cocky attitude because she'd kind of go around the prison like, yeah, whatever, I'm whatever. And then the guard got sick of it and was like, yeah, she killed her son. And then all of a sudden she was attacked immediately.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, how do we feel?
Well, I mean,
about-
if you have a life sentence, in
You'll die in there
prison,
either way?
You're gonna. Well, I'm
Did she
just
have a
thinking of
life
like,
sentence?
but I'm just thinking of the people who are in there, in the jail.
Oh, to
like,
murder
what do
someone,
they
you
have
mean?
to? Yeah.
like, what do they have to
risk?
lose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple
Eating
days.
privileges.
For sure.
Do
there's
they
a lot of
really?
people who-
No, I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure some of them would go to
Solitary confinement.
solitary. Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to be in there for life, who cares?
I suppose.
What do you have to lose?
Yeah. And you're like, their thinking is that then they would potentially protect other people if those bad people got out.
I would love to have someone who works in a corrections facility
That'd be awesome.
come on our podcast and tell us a little bit about that.
We do know some corrections officers, but I don't know that they've worked in a prison.
No, but like, I mean, still.
But they work with criminals. But I don't know how that would work with them.
How much?
I
they
don't know.
can
We
say.
could ask. But
Like
yeah.
I'm kind of Criminal Mind. I love Criminal Minds because
too.
not only do I love the cast and everything, but I like getting into people's heads a
the
little bit.
psychology behind everything.
Yes.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
that kind of brings into a question about people who do bad things. Do you think it was
Like, are we born with it?
are some people naturally bad, or does their upbringing and environment lead them to commit crimes?
Mm-hmm.
And then how much should we blame society and how much should we blame the person? And I really think it's upbringing and environment.
I do too.
Because
I think we can be naturally predisposed.
Have you
because
heard
of mental
of-
conditions or whatever? But
Have you heard of people who like kill animals at the age of like
Yes.
3?
Yes.
And like all these signs of serial killers.
yes,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
which that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a natural, there's I forget what word I even just said, but there's a certain brain chemistry that naturally predisposes you to these
in the
actions.
correct environment.
Yes, and in the correct environment, that's just like stoking the fire, basically. It's sometimes I've heard it even said that like sometimes it's like triggered by things. So I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes, okay, so one of my favorite shows was Kids Behind Bars, kids being tried
I
as
also really like Scared
adults.
Straight.
Some people make fun of that show, and
I liked it. I thought it was good.
yeah, it's good, but it's kind of meme-ish. But anyway, there was this one story, and this guy, he was behind bars because he murdered someone over drugs. But they talked about it. You know, you hear these crimes, and you're like, oh yeah, throw them in there and lock and throw away the key, basically. But then someone will come forward, like is it a therapist?
I don't know.
Anyway, they're gonna be like, well, he was abused his whole life by the mom's boyfriends. He tried telling his grandma, hey, she didn't do anything about it. The family was so poor, they literally ate a can of beans. Like, that's all they had in the house. And it was just kind of a cycle of bad environment. And then in school, he did terrible because he bullied kids, and then they sent him to a school. It now finally shut down. But the school, they were known for like killing kids and like giving them really bad treatments. Like, they would chain them to the ground, they would starve them, they would beat them, and even like molest them. But he was in that school, and then his cherry on top was killing a kid. But all he's known is bad things.
Yeah.
He tried to have someone help him. Nobody helped him. So he finally just snapped.
Succumbed to
Yeah.
the inevitable
Yeah.
cruelty.
And then he was, I think, 30 when they were talking to him, and he's like, you know, I found God, I found my religion, I found my people, and he's like, I was young and dumb. I should have known better. And I'm like, well, you didn't really know better because no one had your back ever.
Yeah.
So then you hear like he wants to change, and if he does get out, he has some people that are there to help him. But then he obviously didn't because he attacked an officer. But then I kind of like, well, did the officer say something to him that made him snap? I don't know.
I agree with that also, but then like how do we continue to fall on excuses for
that's
like bad
true.
behavior?
I
You know?
So then that's where I get like, I could never be on jury duty because
Yeah.
I'm like, I totally understand.
I can
like,
empathize for
yeah.
sure, but also like where was your head?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, how are you going to function in the real world?
Right. Yeah.
It's so hard.
Coming from a religious standpoint with that question, I think we are all intrinsically good considering how we were made. But again, we live now in a fallen world, and so bad is just part of life.
Yeah. So yeah, those episodes always like, they're horrible to hear the crimes that they did, but then like it's always how they grew up and then what they saw and what they faced, and the cherry on top was unaliving somebody.
Yeah.
And then they get older and like, yeah, I was young and dumb, and that's all I knew.
I saw a story on Reddit once, and it was true off my chest, and it was
Confessions.
yes, and you know those schools that they send them to, right? You were just talking about. Someone confessed, I sent my kid to one of those schools today.
That's so scary.
And they're they've done everything. They've taken him to every counselor. They've taken him to every doctor, every psychiatrist that they can get their hands on. Like, they have they listed out, and I don't know how much of this is true. It's just a post on Reddit. It could have been totally made up. But like, it came to a point where it was a danger for the other children in the home.
Yeah.
For the child to continue living there. And it was just like, what else can you do? They've tried to, you know, get them in juvie. They were in juvie for a little bit. They got back out of juvie, and they tried to, you know, and it was just constant. They couldn't go to school. They got kicked out of every school that they went to. And it was like, what do you do with your child when at that point? But it was parents, and this is why I have sometimes trouble with the nature versus nurture. It's sometimes parents really have done everything, or maybe they're trying to reverse damage that has been done. And there comes a certain point where it's just, I think some people are just evil.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a Dr. Phil episode. The mom basically, like, he won't listen to me, blah, blah, blah. And then it was, I think, Dr. Phil basically telling her, like, well, you should have done better. Or so, I don't know. So, yeah,
I don't know.
it always seems to be like a one-sided story for that, some of that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, oh, my kid does this, this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, the kid's not posting on Reddit
Yeah.
Yeah.
his side of the story.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
I don't know. I just can't imagine being in that situation, and I can't.
What would I do? I have no idea.
I would have no idea.
Yeah.
The way that they list everything out, it made it sound like they had done everything they could.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's scary.
But then it comes to that age-old argument. We've been talking about this the entire time. Is it nature or is it nurture that causes people to be the way they are? You know? Are you genetically predispositioned to the cruelty?
Yeah. I think potentially yes, and triggered more so by trauma.
Because what age do
Circumstances.
you start remembering things? At 4 or 5?
Yeah, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when they're like, okay, this is where you're going to set an example for your child.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oof.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's a lot. So,
For sure.
Heavy episode. Yeah.
but I kind of going off topic a little bit. A lot of people, when they think of fostering, they want to do a younger kid because
Less
there's
trauma.
yeah, less trauma. But then I had a lady in my chair, and she said a lot of these teenagers really want to be fostered in, but nobody they just kind of look the other way. They're like, no, we want a 3-year-old or a baby. And then
I think that's hard for teenagers too, because we make assumptions about like the
yeah.
potential things that they've been through when
Yeah.
I'm not saying that what they've been through is minimal, but like in terms of
People
not
don't
every
wanna deal
single
with
kid
it.
is sexually assaulted and that like so
Working
heavily
against a lot
neglected
of
that they're like,
stereotypes.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
But that I saw a TikTok, and this lady, she's like, I bring in teenagers because they need it, and she'll make a little care package. She'll have them in a room, and she'll make a little care package. She'll have like deodorant, shampoos, conditioners, a new thing of clothes, and everything. And reading the comments, people were like, I totally would have loved this as a foster teenager. And so many comments were like, oh, I just love that you're doing that for someone because someone out there is caring about them. That's
Yeah.
all they want. So basically the whole thread was, thank you so much for
Giving a shit.
yeah, and like kind of helping them out a little bit too, because some people don't know basic hygiene. So, but they
Yeah, I
were just
remember
really thankful for that.
I used to
person.
work at the behavior school in town. I won't say the name, but we did something called Big Store, and it was basically because they run on a certain program where you like earn points for good behavior. You would go to Big Store then, and you'd be able to like purchase items with your points, and some of those items, because a lot of these kids lived in the dorms, didn't have like families at all, and were running completely on state funding or, you know, very minimal family interaction and stuff like that. Things like deodorant, toothpaste, and stuff like that would
So-
be in Big Store for these kids to buy and take back to the dorms or their homes or wherever.
Yep. I've been seeing TikTok teachers who are getting a hygiene drawer, and she said it's just in the back, so kids can do it anonymously. She'll have deodorant, toothbrushes, toothpaste, like that natural hygiene stuff.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really smart.
Oh, I was like, that's
Yeah.
really sweet.
Yeah, it is.
But like, just kind of caring just that little bit does so much for a person.
Yeah. When nobody does.
Yeah,
Gosh.
Yes.
I agree. That to me is a lot more effective than some of
Throwing
the other,
them in front of a therapist, like, all right, here you go, tell your problems to
I mean,
them. And
maybe potentially, but as a teacher, I think that's a lot more effective sometimes than, I don't know. I don't know,
well, it's like
I don't know how to explain
Calissa
that, I
said,
guess.
just kind of giving a shit about them,
Yeah.
showing
Yeah.
that someone out there, like, yep, I care about you.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions on there that are good?
Yeah. At what age are we fully responsible for our actions? What is the youngest age that a criminal should be punished as an adult? Oof.
That's so hard.
Depends on what they did.
Yeah, I feel like at that point it really depends on action versus age. But I don't know.
I think each case would have to be looked at separately.
Yeah.
The circumstances would have
Which
to
I
be.
think is is like what happens, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're in family court unless you do the certain action, in which case they'll send you up to.
There is an episode. I can't even talk about it. It would ruin the whole series. Just watch Mayor of Easttown on HBO Max.
Is that a Taylor Sheridan?
No, it has Kate Winslet in it. And
feel
she
like
is
I've heard of
such
that.
an excellent actress in it. Oh my gosh. You would not imagine that coming from the sweet little Rose from Titanic. But like
No, she kind of
is
turned into a badass actress.
Yes.
Really?
She was
She does some, like,
phenomenal.
She does some pretty deep roles. That Saoirse Ronan,
Cersei Ronan or whatever.
they had like a full-on lesbian
Saoirse. Oh, that's her name.
affair on a TV show
Ooh.
or movie. I watched it. Hot. Just kidding. But yeah,
It's good. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, Mayor of Easttown.
Mayor-
And then that particularly pertains to this question, but if I tell you why, it would ruin the whole series.
nah,
So,
dang it.
yeah.
It's always the case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have you seen a crime being committed? What did you see?
I have not. That
I've
I'm
seen
aware
people
of.
drive drunk.
Oh. There was one time that we did call the non-emergency line for a person who was like swerving a lot in traffic.
But I've been like out with somebody and like they're loaded
Oh.
and, you know,
Yikes.
you find out that they got home just fine by themselves, you know?
Ooh.
So,
I was in Dick's Sporting Goods, and it was just me and my son. We're just kind of walking around. Nick's looking at jackets somewhere afar. And this person, they like grabbed a knife, right? They grabbed, I believe it was like a knife or some kind of blade, and they like hid in the clothes rack. And I could hear them trying to like open up something.
oh, really?
And I'm like, oh my God, he's opening up a knife and he shouldn't be. Like, he didn't pay for it or anything.
Oh.
And so I had to do a. So he like quickly stopped what he was doing and then ran the other direction. Because I can't imagine like because I'm just going to stand there and just look.
Yeah.
And if he like opens up this knife.
He has a knife. Like,
He's like, what'd you see?
Yeah.
yeah.
I had one very clear instance of someone stealing shoes when I worked at the shoe store. And that was really hard because we couldn't technically say anything. Like
That could be profiling.
we could follow them and be like,
And
you know,
they'll
keep an
know.
eye on them
Don't know.
to try to prevent them from stealing. But like per company rules, like we couldn't actually like say like, open your purse, show me what you had. Like that.
Really?
No, at the time. This was 10 years ago. So I don't know if that has changed.
Wow.
Probably
But
not.
My brother worked in, oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
had been following this lady through the store, and then my other cashier was already with a customer, and I was a manager at the time, so I had to be called up to do something else, and I was like, shit, because I just knew as soon as I walked away, as I was doing my thing, I was still keeping my eyes on her, and she was watching me the whole time, and she picked up her stuff and skedoodled out of there, and I was like, fuck.
Wouldn't that set the sensors off?
We didn't have sensors. So, yeah.
My brother worked in loss and prevention at Best Buy, and he could say something.
Good.
And he found a lady trying to shove an Xbox down her shirt on
That's
Black Friday.
hilarious.
Not even
you
like a
imagine,
tablet. It's just
You think
like
someone wouldn't see?
full on Xbox.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Oh man.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I have another story too, but I don't remember now.
I think I've told this before on the podcast. I had a lady pull a knife on me at work.
No.
I think maybe vaguely I remember you saying that.
Yeah. So I suppose that was a crime. That was happening.
That's like a full
That's
on.
like
felony?
harassment.
Yeah.
And, like,
She pointed at me and I'm like, I can't talk to you until you put the knife down. And she's like, I'm not being blah, 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 blah. I was like, I can't talk to you until you put the knife down. And I'm blah, 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 blah. And she just kept going on. And I just kept repeating, I cannot talk to you until you put the knife down. I cannot talk to you until you put the knife down. Finally, she put the knife down. I'm like, okay, let's talk.
that was very like. Were you that calm the whole time? Because wow.
I think I probably sounded a little less calm, but yeah, that's just, I kept repeating that.
Yeah.
I can't talk to you until you put the knife down. And that's what she was. I just had a stroke there for a second. And that's what she wanted, is she wanted someone to hear her. She wanted to feel heard and listened to. And pretty much she said, then she turned the knife on herself And she was like, well, I'm going to stab myself. So then there's a real problem for you guys to solve, you know, because we supposedly didn't believe her was her whole thing. So
That's hard.
yeah, that's the scariest,
One
closest
time-
I've been to being in a victim.
Oh, being a victim. One time when I was driving home with my kids, the car in front of us started weaving.
Oh no.
And then crossed traffic and almost hit a vehicle and drove through a field, like a mile into this field, and just kept going. And I was like, what the hell? So I ended up calling 911. And I'm on the phone with them talking, whatever, freaking out, obviously. And they just start their car back up and drive through this person's yard and try to come back out on the street. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And so I'm following them, talking to the dispatch lady, like, yeah, I'm behind this car. We're going this way on this street, blah, 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 whatever. And so then they turn and then they're like, oh, it's okay. There's a police officer there to intercept them, whatever. And so I get a call later from the intercepting police officer. And he explains to me this whole thing. And this guy was he came from Menards or Fleet Farm. I forget which one. He's like, he huffed a can.
Oh.
And just fucked off into a field. And then drove home like nothing happened. Ruined this farmer's fence. All these crops were like messed up.
He almost got away with it too.
Yeah. And
If it weren't
luckily,
for these metal gifts.
I had called the
That's how they
911 and then
sound.
the lady that he almost hit had called 911 also.
Nice.
So luckily there was 2 vehicles and she had also followed him. So
2 witnesses.
that was lucky.
Yes.
Yeah. But I had to like make a statement and whatever. And he's like, yeah. And he had 5 more cans in the back seat. And I was like, you know what really pisses me off about that kind of stuff? Where it's like, it could only affect you. Is that you didn't wait the 5 minutes it took you to drive home to do that. Instead, you did it in the car, and you potentially could have hurt someone else. Like my kids were in the back. If that had been my car on the opposite side of the road and you hit my car with my kids in the car, if I had survived, I would slash you so hard, I would go to jail because you'd be fucked up, bro. Like, that is what pisses me off about certain crimes.
Yeah.
So, like, do what you want when it only affects you. I don't care. Be in your home and only do you. I don't care. But when it could potentially affect me or my
not
family
in
or my kids, like,
Moving
Nope.
vehicle. Ooh,
Yeah.
Yucky.
yeah.
Can't think about, the guilt of something like, God forbid.
Survivor's guilt would be terrible.
Yeah. Was it that, where you just think of horrible things happening all the time?
Oh, I definitely have that.
I don't know what it's called, but like, yeah. I know you asked me, like, you don't get horrible things. And I'm like, yeah, I hear it.
Intrusive thoughts.
Intrusive
There you go.
Like a headline, like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Stuff is scary. But I think about that now and about driving, especially with your children in the back seat. Like, if something were to happen to my kids and I no scratch free or whatever, I would lose my mind.
Yeah.
I would probably kill myself. That's kind of sad, morbid, but I probably would.
Honestly, like, I give a lot of props to parents who keep going
Yeah.
after their children's death.
For sure. Even if it wasn't their fault.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's fucking sad.
it is.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Let's
But-
end this episode.
Sorry. Well, it was pretty bad to begin with, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So those are our thoughts.
Yeah. Let us know if you guys would want to hear us talk about some of the cases either in our area or if there are bigger cases around that you're interested in.
Yeah.
We'd kind of talked about just doing like an overview or an in-depth of some,
This could be
cases,
a
but-
recurring topic too.
yeah, potentially for sure. So let us know. You know our Instagram, 30 Crying and Trying. Leave us a comment. Send us a DM, whatever floats your boat. So yeah.
Okay. This has been Calissa.
Hannah.
And Sarah.
Bye.